In the Tayos cave of Ecuador, numerous tablets were found with unknown writing. And not only one, in the caves, a great number of artifacts were found that had clear connection with the ancient cultures of Europe and Asia. There were many gold tablets as well within this finding. These artifacts clearly do not belong to any of the cultures that are listed in the school books on America. And the Taos cave findings are not isolated case. For example, the priest Father Crespi collected amazing artifacts. They numbered thousands. Unfortunately, most of his collection mysteriously burned down. Basically, he was a very good man and he won the trust of the local people because of doing good things for them, and they started gifting him old artifacts. Many of those artifacts showed clear connection with the so-called Old World. And that shouldn't be a surprise, because the tribes in America are well aware about their brothers on the other side of the ocean. They have recorded an arrival, for example, one of the arrivals is from Aztlan. This Aztlan could very well be Atlantis, because even the Mayas in Popol Vuh and few other codexes, few other places mention that the people in Aztlan suffered a terrible disaster and flood and fled from their land. And also these people gave them culture and according to Mayas themselves built many wonderful cities. Sylvan Morley has recorded ancient Mayan history where they themselves, the Mayas, tell us that some of their white brothers came from Atotlan, and that was on the other side of the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. In Popol Vuh, there are even more detailed descriptions that not only people came from across the ocean, but regular connections were also maintained. The tribes in Guatemala say that even in most adverse conditions, they will never forget their white brothers who came across the ocean from the east and built these wonderful cities here. And these brothers from across the ocean left many artifacts behind them. Over time, hundreds of them surfaced in the state of Michigan. Another group of artifacts were found by Russ Burroughs some 2 decades ago in Illinois. All of them are denied proper scientific study because they do not fit in the history that is being preached in school. And the mass media spite propaganda was launched against them, saying that they could be forgery. Of course they could be, as every other artifact in every other museum can be questioned without any grounds as well. But especially the legitimacy of the Michigan tablets is very hard to dispute because they were found by completely different groups of people, and they documented their findings in the most reliable for that time fashion. Namely, they would take the 10 most respected men of the area or the village where they were building, and those men were standing observing that indeed there was an ancient mound being opened and inspected, and after that they would sign that yes, I was present and I observed that this was not some forgery, but these were real artifacts excavated from the earth. By the way, this is the most interesting scene from a Michigan tablet. Here, a history lesson is depicted in an ancient classroom. I bet that the kids at that time were much better informed than our kids. Moreover, the Michigan findings were found along with countless thousands of other artifacts connected with the ancient mining, again connected with Europe. So, in that case, forgery is almost impossible, taking into consideration the very number of the artifacts found. These precious findings from Michigan were exhibited for some time labeled as hoax in an official museum. That was the way to get them out to the public, and I like the label that was placed in that exhibition. It said, if you know of other findings or other people that are still finding such artifacts in Michigan, please do tell us. So on one side, the organizers of the exhibition say this is a hoax because that's what they're supposed to say in order to organize it. And on the other hand, they're asking, if you know of other findings, please tell us. And as you can see, a lot of the stuff is straightforwardly Egyptian. This is found in West Virginia, same writing as we saw in Ecuador and in Illinois and many other places. So these are definitely not isolated artifacts. This is from El Salvador. And if you feel that you need to see real pyramids to get convinced about the Egyptian presence in America, here they are. And as we covered earlier, the parallels between the building styles of ancient America and Egypt are too many to have evolved without any connection. Even minor details like the inward slanting angle of the walls is the same in both cultures on the both sides of the ocean. What to speak of the polygonal masonry, that is extremely complicated style of building that we cannot even replicate now? How come people were using it on both sides of the ocean and the mainstream historians are trying to assure us that they had nothing to do with each other? The Mayan arches bear remarkable resemblance to those of Ziggurat of Ur in Iraq. Look at the tool marks left on the rock quarries in South America. Well, the Egyptians were using the same tools. And yet another artifact with Sumerian-like and other writings, Egyptian-like writings, this time found in West Virginia, in a mound, burial mound. Minoan-style pendant found in Ohio. This is interesting. Sumerian writing found near a portrait of something that looks like the Lady of Elche. On the right you see the artifact found in Utah, United States, and on the left is the famous Spanish figure. Now this really looks like a kangaroo to me, and it was found in South America. Another interesting pre-Columbian artifact from that region are houses, 4 or 5 stories high. Also their style doesn't look like it belongs to the civilization that mostly lived in South America. Maybe these were depictions of some European or Asian houses. Apparently people were well connected in those times. Now specialists observed that this stela could not have been made with any stone or copper tools, chisels, or anything primitive like that, so the question arises, how did they make it? This is a very interesting parallel between the writing system of the Indus Valley of India and Pakistan and that of Easter Islands of Chile. You remember the interesting Michigan artifacts. They were centered around a mining society. Copper was mined there. Big natural chunks of copper are found over there. This is an example of a big one weighing 3 tons. So many artifacts were found that even they had to build a small local museum. Many archaeologists were involved. It was difficult to cover up the full thing, so they had to come up with some sort of explanation. What is this all about? So the explanation they fabricated is like this. All this was done by some ancient tribe of hunter-gatherers, people who didn't even have homes. They were not yet advanced enough to have a settled life or any agriculture or any culture as such, and yet these people who didn't even have ceramics, they were supposedly manufacturing in industrial quantities these advanced tools, moreover in European style. These wild people didn't have any forks or plates or anything, and yet they were melting and pouring metal and shaping it in sophisticated tools. Pouring in what if they didn't have any vessels? Even many mainstream archaeologists frankly say that they find such dating to be ridiculous. And yet this is a vivid example how the school history doesn't even represent the opinion of even most mainstream historians. Link number 29 in the description points towards a nice lecture that explains the truth about these European actually settlers that were mining copper there in the antique America. Something else very interesting to watch is the work of Jim Vieira and Fritz Zimmermann about the enormous megalithic mounds found in large quantities all over America. The culture that was building those is also absolutely ignored and excluded from the school books of America. And it was the same culture that was building the same structures all over Europe as well. This photo is from Europe. The reason for ignoring full cultures, even when there are plenty of artifacts left from them, is that these cultures belonged to the people that survive from the old advanced civilizations. These people still had the technology to freely travel between continents. But the modern parasitic paradigm is trying to trick the people into thinking that the only way to have advanced technology and civilizations is to comply with their ideas and their parasitic way of life of pollution, war, lies, and violence. And all traces of advanced civilizations that could travel between continents and build amazing megaliths are simply ignored as much as possible. Here we see a blonde boy amongst the Maori people. This is an old photo. This doesn't naturally occur in their race, but it happens because people were coming, people from Atlantis, or in America they called it Aztlan. They were mixing with the locals, they were helping them. There was a tribe in Dakota called Mandan Indians. They are now wiped out, but travelers who were in America a few centuries ago described some of the members of this tribe as light-haired and blue-eyed people. So apparently there were tribes of all races. Now this multi-racial tribe situation doesn't at all suit the fabricated history that is being preached in schools, and that's why all kind of clever methods are devised to distract the attention of the general public from the actual truth. And if one starts talking about Caucasian people in ancient America, that is immediately followed by loud screams that are supposed to make the Caucasian people feel guilty and feel that they are robbing the natives out of their glorious history. In reality, it is the history fabricators who are disrespecting the history that the native people are keeping about their white brothers. The history fabricators are working hard to erase the memory of everybody of the times when the native and Caucasians were friends. The parasites have driven the Native Americans in reservations and have simply stolen their land. On the other side, they are actively trying to convert all Caucasian people into their parasitic paradigm and scam them into believing that the only path towards progress is plundering most shamelessly the riches of other races and then bombing their countries to death and destruction. And while all that is going on, we are cutting everybody together, led by the parasites, cutting the very branch that we stand on by poisoning the very planet we live on. The only way to put an end to this suicidal path of ours is to get back to the old ways, the ways that were shown to us by the survivors of Atlantis and Hyperborea. When those survivors arrived in America, they taught their knowledge of amazing megalith building and many other things to the locals. They did not kill or plunder the locals. And the genes of Viracocha, his descendants, can still be found amongst the nowadays Peruvians. You see the girl with the blonde hair? Some more blue-eyed Peruvian gods. Again, the color of the hair of the mummies fully corresponds to the statuettes found in this culture. Do you notice the blonde beards of the men? And as usual, Atlantis/Hyperborea fashion band on their forehead. Well, the last few photographs were Caucasian mummies from Peru, but it's not different in North America. Pizarro wrote about his experiences with the Incas in Peru, and apparently he met white people ruling over there. Unfortunately, as usual, the original of his writings is not available. It has disappeared. Only copies are available. But even after undergoing parasitic edition, here and there some useful information does transpire in his writings. He also mentions that there were many fine hotels, for example. Question arises, who could have built hotels that would appear to be very fine according to the taste of a refined Spanish gentleman of that time. Some other sources quote him telling that he found some 500 of the Caucasian Inca gods still well and living amongst them. As we will see later on, all of the books written at the time when supposedly America was discovered for the first time, were not to the taste of the history fabricators, and that's why they were all quarantined. And later on their originals all disappeared and only edited copies are available nowadays. This is an old painting of fair-skinned Inca rulers, Inca kings. Now these are very old photos of Native Americans. They don't look like belonging to the red Native American race. And I think that's absolutely normal because we saw so many artifacts of cultures from all over the world and mummies from people from all over the world. We'll see also African in a while. So all these races, they came with their artifacts, they mixed with the local people. It was really, as every other continent, pretty much international place. Some Seminole Indians in their traditional outfits, they look as if they have come straight from Europe.
This is the cloud forest of the Amazon. It is a remote and inhospitable place. Yet last year, deep in the jungle, one of the most remarkable archaeological finds of the century was made. A sacred burial ground full of ancient mummies was discovered. Soon, rumors spread that these mummies were different to any ever found before in South America, that they had discovered a lost race of people, until now assumed to be nothing but legend.
The chroniclers always describe them as beautiful people, tall, nice, lighter complexion.
The Spaniards reported that there were blue-eyed blonde people in Chachapoyas, or in the Cloud People. The Incas found them to be the most beautiful women in the empire, and they were sought after by the Inca kings.
Who were these people, laid to rest in high mountain tombs? And what were they doing there? This evidence may throw light on the origins of the mummies. The mummies were found in the northeast of Peru, on the far side of the Andes. And there are also adult mummies here, wrapped in textiles.
No, entonces espérate, lo va a aguantar. No, está bien, está bien, está bien. Bajen. Cuidado, un momento.
These mummies are hundreds of years old and should have rotted in the high humidity of the cloud forest. Yet they are wonderfully preserved. Something extraordinary is going on here, something the team don't fully understand. But as they explore the site further, clues begin to emerge.
¡Wow! Espérate, Peter, te voy a tomar foto.
Ya, posando.
Precioso.
Agárralo así.
Extiéndelo despacito.
This is the best textile we've found so far, in great state of preservation. This is a men's shirt, and the technique for preparing this shirt is quite remarkable.
The team's first thought was that they had found an Inca burial site. But figures of animals and demons are almost unknown in Inca art. And they didn't decorate the tombs of their dead with images like these.
¿Y este, Peter? Este chacha, ¿no?
The pottery is very unusual as well.
It seems to be a mixture between Chacha and Inca influences.
Peter Lercher is an anthropologist who's an expert on the cultures of this region.
Comparing these pictographs with Inca design motifs, it's definite that they are not belonging to the Inca culture. They are expressions or artistic expressions of Chachapoyan culture.
But who were the Chachapoya, or the Cloud People? They are first mentioned in the Chronicles, books written by Spanish priests, but based on stories told by the Inca. The books speak of an Inca emperor who marched his army into the cloud forest in the 1480s and was astonished to find a great civilization there. These stories were dismissed as legends, but not by explorer Jean Savoy.
The only thing I knew about the Chachapoyas is what I had read in the Spanish Chronicles regarding the conquest of the Chachapoyas kingdom by the Inca Tupac Yupanqui, who reported that he had conquered 7 great cities. I didn't believe that those cities that he had conquered had been found. So I decided to launch an expedition to Chachapoyas to find the Cloud People. Of course, I love exploring. To me, it was a challenge. I loved it.
For 6 years, Savoy and his men battled their way through the hostile jungle.
The rains, the mud, the snakes, thousands of snakes. I was bit by one once, almost lost my leg. I've been very sick with, I got hepatitis, if you can believe that, in the jungle.
Finally, deep in the cloud forest, they came across ruins of great stone buildings hidden under centuries of jungle growth.
I could actually, at times, hear the clashing of swords, the battles that were going on between the Incas and the Spaniards, or the Chachapoyas and the Incas. Sometimes you would find ceramic vessels just laying on top of the ground. It's as if they had fled these buildings and left them. It was very exciting to be in a virgin place that people hadn't been in for centuries.
The locals had always known about the ruins.
The natives were extremely superstitious about the ruins being enchanted. They talked about Solpe Machaco, which was a 7-headed snake that would wrap around you like a net. And they were actually terrified. They figured that they would be changed to stone. But What amazed me was the large number of round structures, which we couldn't explain because the Incas built in rectangular linear lines.
These buildings were shaped and decorated in a fashion never before seen in Peru. And Jean Savoy found something else that the Inca had talked about: cliff tombs.
When the Inca Tupac Yupanqui invaded Chachapoyas, he stated, what I find amazing was the tombs that they built up in the cliffs that housed the chiefs and the overlords of the Chachapoyas kingdom.
When he discovered cliff tombs exactly like those described by the Inca, and like none other in South America, Savoy was convinced that he had indeed found the last resting place of the Cloud People. Inside the tomb are mummies with their hands bound over their eyes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
There are also a large number of mummies wrapped in sackcloth, with faces stitched on the outside.
Look at that embroidery. Beautiful, look.
Wow.
Usually they're round faces, no? This one's charming.
But it's obvious that the looters have also got to this tomb first.
This is a bundle that clearly shows where the looters had wrecked the bundles. This is the face, and let's move it here. And here you can see they used something really sharp, and they sliced and opened here, just probably looking for metals. Once they figure out there was nothing, they just tossed it. Well, this is frustrating. This is really destroying good evidence.
Oh my God. Joey's saying a really big one's coming up.
Now.
¿Qué tan grande, Joey? Okay.
These mummies seem to be physically different as well.
Yeah? Mummy bundles ranging from babies to what seem to be really huge people. I mean, judging from the size of the mummy bundles, really amazing. I've never been in a situation where I've been handed one mummy after another and just handed it to Sonia, who puts a label on it and then takes it off for storage in the cave and for bundling up for its journey to Laimabamba.
The fact that the mummies are tall is potentially very significant. Buried deep in the Spanish chronicles are fascinating passages describing the Cloud People as beautiful and tall.
They were a bit different to Andean people, and up till today, Chachapoyas, local people look a bit different to other Andean people. That is reflected in the mummies. I think when the chroniclers said beautiful, it's because they were different and they were strong. Through the bones, they were taller, they were more robust, and if they had to live in this area, certainly they had to be more robust.
Near the lake where the mummies were found is the great fortress of Cuelap, which is over 1,000 years old. Almost certainly built by the Cloud People, Cuelap is the most monumental structure in the Americas. Its incredible walls are over 60 feet high and stretch for more than 2/3 of a mile. The Great Pyramid of Egypt is a wonder of the world, yet this fortress was built from 2.5 times as much granite, all of which was carried to a mountaintop over 9,000 feet above sea level. Over 500 years ago, the people of Peru knew the secrets of using herbs and chemicals to preserve the human body.
Okay.
Sonia Guillen and her colleagues are not prepared to speculate on who these mummies were or where they came from. They plan to do DNA analysis and skin testing, which may answer some of these questions. For the moment, Sonia does the investigation she can, in this case, using X-rays to confirm her suspicions that the mummies have had all their internal organs removed.
This is the internal cavity, this is the pelvic area. If the intestines were present with intestinal content, we should be able to see them. So I would say that we have here an image that indicates that there are no organs inside this cavity.
The incredible discovery in the Lake of the Condors will keep the team busy for many years. But it's now clear that these mummies were almost certainly part of the great lost civilization of the Cloud people, and that they have many more secrets to reveal.
These mummies were done in such a way that they looked like live people. They were treated like live people. That's why they were put in such a lovely place, and that's why they were visited. So we will have to keep on visiting them and learning more from them.
team led by the University of Melbourne in Australia has reconstructed the female face of Egyptian mummified head believed to be more than 2,000 years old. According to a news release, the project began when a staff member became concerned that her tightly wrapped head, which was stored in a basement for nearly a century, could be decaying from the inside without anyone noticing. In an effort to examine her with the least amount of disruption, researchers scanned the skull and, based on its well-preserved condition, decided to conduct additional work. For the reconstruction, data from CT scans was fed into a 3D printing system to create a detailed model of her skull. The replica was then handed to a sculptor with forensic expertise who approximated the woman's facial tissue based on population data and anatomical ratios and built her musculature and features with clay. The head was then preserved with resin, painted a dark olive color to reflect the predominant skin tone of the time, and given dark hair with thin braids. Though the appearance of the woman, since named Meritamun, has largely been completed, researchers are still working to learn more about her health and cause of death.
Scientists in Greece have reconstructed the face of an ancient Athenian girl using the teeth and skull found in a mass grave. Named Myrtis, the life-size mannequin now forms part of an exhibition called Face to Face with the Past.
The facial reconstruction process utilized the teeth and skull from her skeleton discovered in a mass grave in 1995. The 11-year-old girl, known as Myrtis, died of typhoid fever during a plague in 430 BC. Manolis Papagrigorakis, a professor and orthodontist from the University of Athens, worked with a team of 20 scientists on the project. Child health.
them in some ways, and they began to speak to me after a while. And so I began to understand something about the matrix of the Earth, and something about the way some megalithic peoples used to think and behave. And it's far different to what the textbooks say about. So over the past 5 years, my partner Caroline and I have been exploring Italy and Greece. And we found, to our amazement, that some of the so-called Etruscan, Roman, Iron Age sites had these incredible megalithic walls around them that were colossal in size, and the stones were arranged in a way that seemed far superior to the abilities of the Romans. And so I'm going to show you some of these magnificent walled cities and towns, and talk about who may have built them. The Etruscans are one of the most mysterious races in the world. They appeared around 1000 BC and disappeared around 400 BC, mainly because they were absorbed by the Romans. The Romans did a fantastic job in destroying their civilization. There's hardly anything left of their cities today. Even the foundations were taken away. All that is left is their tombs and some, of course, their art, their pottery, and their fantastic jewellery, which is, to me, equal to the Celtic jewellery that came out in Northumberland. Here's a little example here. You see, these curbstones are classic Etruscan. You'll see them all Etruscan sites. And the masonry is set end to end and side by side in straight courses. Also at this site of Vulci is a great mound of cucumella. Now this is from a notice board at the reception information centre, showing what they believe was a large mound. In size it would be larger than Silbury Hill and bigger than Newgrange. But they can't understand why it had a square tower and a round tower in the middle, and a labyrinth inside. Well, archaeologists and historians have come up with this theory that, do you remember those little cone pyramids you saw at the other site at Tarquini? Well, here you had the biggest ever. And this makes sense of the structure inside. The tower was supporting, and they'd found tiles from the sides of the cone when they excavated it. So they know this was one of the biggest cone-shaped pyramids in Europe. And it was surrounded by lion heads on top of the walls. And a labyrinth, an intricate labyrinth all the way through to a tomb that belonged to one of the Tarquins. But the photograph on the right shows what it looks like today. There's very little left of it. Here's an artist's impression of how it looked inside. You've seen the labyrinth, and also this strange staircase going down below the round tower, rather like some of the Egyptian pyramids. The Etruscans were also fantastic engineers. They built the first bridges. This bridge dates from 500 BC. You know, Romans were supposed to have built bridges, weren't they, didn't they? But no, the Etruscans did. And in fact, most of the Etruscan engineers really gave their knowledge to the Romans at the end of their empire. So the Romans actually built their empire on the backs of the Etruscans.
They prepare to biopsy the 3,300-year-old body. But Zahi is worried. The mummy is in fragile condition, fractured by the archaeologists who first found it decades ago.
Well, there's our research that we're hearing today that shows half of all Western European men are somehow related to the Egyptian pharaoh King Tutankhamun. CTV's Marella Fernandez here with more on this. Marella, what's up with this?
It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So this is coming out of Switzerland, and the researchers there have found that not only do half of Western European men have this connection, genetic profile connection, but 70% of men in Britain, which is astounding. But they all have the same genetic profile or same ancestry as King Tut from Egypt way back when.
King Tut was only 19 when he died, and his bones were young and hard. So getting a sample from the femur is a delicate and painstaking operation.
قلبي بيرفرف مع التكة دي.
Success.
It's hard to believe. I mean, King Tutankhamun, I think, lived probably to be about 14. How did he get around with all that?
Yeah, he didn't get past his teenage years, and he only ruled for 10 years. But I guess it goes back even further than that. And here's what's really shocking about this. Less than 1% of modern-day Egyptians have that same connection. So it kind of makes you wonder, well, if he's Egyptian, but the ancestry isn't Egyptian, how did it evolve? Which way did it move? And it looks like it didn't start in Egypt, but it evolved and went to Egypt and may have started in Europe. And that's why all the Europeans have this background.
Mayan-era murals. The impoverished town of Chajul, Guatemala was in for a surprise when a family decided to renovate their home and unearthed ancient Mayan murals. Experts say finding these types of paintings is extraordinarily rare, so naturally, they are of extremely high value.
This is Bill Ryan here from Project Camelot and Project Avalon, and it's 20th of February 2010, and it's my great privilege to be meeting again with Klaus Donner. And in this video presentation, it's going to be an interview of the difference, because I'm going to do very little talking indeed, maybe none at all. And Klaus is going to be doing an audio commentary on one of his extremely special, unusual and fascinating slideshows about the artifacts and the various phenomena that he has been researching, discovering, investigating personally all over the world, relating to what I think you could legitimately call the hidden history of the human race. Would you say that that's a good summary, Klaus?
That's a very good summary, yes.
So I'm going to step back here, and what follows now, just kick back and enjoy this slide presentation, and Klaus is going to take you through his own journey. You can accompany him on his own journey through his own discoveries. And take it away, Klaus. What are we looking at here? I can see an array of pyramids. What's the significance?
The significance is that you can find pyramids all over the world on each continent. And the question is, when and who did build those pyramids, why many of those pyramids all over the world are looking very, very similar. Another question is, did there really exist a global civilization? And I think many of our researches are really telling us that once upon a long time a global civilization existed. But how many thousands of years ago, we don't know. One other very interesting artifact found on the same place in Ecuador is the so-called pyramid with the eye. The eye is an inlay. The stone is gray and white, and you have 13 steps, and it looks exactly like the pyramid with a shining eye on the $1. If you put this pyramid under black light, the eye is shining very strongly, and it looks really like an eye, but not real like a human eye. Here you have a close-up of the eye, and you can see the colors of the inlay. On the bottom of this pyramid, you have the inlay in little gold plates showing the Orion star constellation, and you have unknown writing. The translation of Professor Kurt Schildmann, who was the president of the German Linguistic Association, and he was perfect in more than 40 languages. He was able to translate this writing. He called it pre-Sanskrit because it is older than the oldest writing. And the translation of these 4 letters you can see here, his translation is "the Son of the Creator comes." As we found the same writing on stones in certain countries like Ecuador, Colombia, Illinois, United States, Clausel, France, Malta in the Mediterranean, Turkmenistan, Australia, and in southern Calabria, Italy, just a few years ago. Always there are stones and ceramics, terracotta, with the same writing. That means this writing existed once worldwide, and that means there must have been a global civilization older than Sanskrit, older than 6,000 years. And Professor Schildmann also told me that this writing has a little similarity to the Indus writing and also to the Easter Island writing. And as he said, this is older than Sanskrit. He called this writing pre-Sanskrit. Now we are moving to Guinea, West Africa, very close to the border with Mali. They found on a huge granite mountain the half-portrait of a lady done in granite stone, and the size of this statue from top of the head until the middle of the torso is exactly 150 meters. So this is a real big question. Who might have been able to do such a huge granite half-portrait in a mountain at least 10 to 12,000 years ago, because the Italian geologist Professor Pittoni was on the spot. He did these photos and he checked the earth on the bottom of this mountain, and his calculation was that this stone monument must have been done at least 10 to 12,000 years ago. But then we have the real big question: who could have been able to do such a big stone monument? Even in our days, it would be impossible, or at least it would cost so much money that it would never be able to do.